Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about something that Smilegate kind of talked about, or I guess kind of announced, but not really. It's something you kind of have to go out of your way to look for. That is, of course, the topic of today, which is whether or not the new characters are actually going to be buffed. They recently announced this new poll. If you want to take a quick look at it, I apologize. Very quick swap over. As you can see here, there's actually been something added. I don't know if this is already here. I think this is a post for today, but as you can see, this is a post that involves the characters and what they do and stuff like that, and it's kind of just an infographic, but noticeably, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, which some people do, some people don't, there's actually a poll here with selectable options that talk about the character and whether they are good, they're bad, they're something in between. I don't really know exactly why they chose the exact selections of choices that they have here, but the long story short of it is that they want to get a gauge or get community feedback from you and everyone that plays the new characters to see what we think of them. Now, I won't spoil too much because, of course, you could. Well, I mean, there's no point in hiding the spoiler anyway because we already see the poll. But however you choose to vote for these characters, let me first give you a bit of a rundown on how Albedo and her trajectory and how this character has kind of panned out, especially as someone who was supposed to be, dealing with her the most or countered by her the most. Let me be absolutely frank. When I first played Albedo and when I first saw Albedo, we had a very, very unimpressive discussion or a showcase, a display from Smilegate. She did her S2 against a target or while she was blind against targets that weren't super squishy. And that is absolutely not what she is being used for right now. But a lot of people initially were saying, well, we don't know what her numbers are yet, but based on what we've seen, she could maybe do a lot of damage to cleavers or to people that want to play AoE characters like Ludwig, Tyran, etc. And the first week, just based off what I saw from people's builds and their drafts and stuff like that, Albedo, quite frankly, looked bad. Not unused, like not niche, not somewhat servable. She looked bad. And believe it or not, after 1 week and after the dust is settled and people have tried to adjust their builds and seen things evolving or, adjust all the builds revolving Albedo, I have to tell you right now, as someone that plays Cleave, there is nothing more annoying than seeing Albedo as a somewhat blind-ish pick. And what I mean by that is that if you fight against Albedo, you don't know if she's on protection set right now. You don't know if she's the DPS. You don't know if she's the mitigation. You don't know if she's going to come back to life. You don't know if she's got 3F. You don't know how fast she is. You don't know how slow she is. If she has effect resistance, if she's going to give barriers to everyone. It is absolutely ridiculous. Now, let me be clear. While I did just mention that, and while it sounds like what I'm trying to say is that Albedo needs a buff, let me be needs a nerf, or doesn't need a buff, rather. Let me just preface this by saying, if you do end up buffing a character like Albedo, such that anyone can make this character good, let's say they add something like a debuff on her S2, or they make her S2 hit even harder, I'm going to tell you right now that a lot of the players that are using her in higher or even medium, anywhere between champ and legend, are going to make this character look more broken than Karina. I promise you this. Now, that being said, it's not to say that I don't think that a character like Albedo doesn't need a little bit of love. And something that I've been kind of thinking about and trying to figure out when it comes to this Albedo character is what kind of change or buff would actually help or benefit her kind of predicament, the situation that she's in. Well, for me, what I think would probably help the most is if what you instead gave her were things that make it a little bit easier for her to build. Something like, I don't know, like a guarantee to crit, or something like what Ravi has been given, or something like a free set of stats. Things that make it a little bit more appealing or a little bit easier for newer players or players that don't have, 100 equipment score on every piece of gear to now make her a little bit more usable. Now, to be clear, I am also kind of hesitant to call for a buff for Albedo. And even though, as I just mentioned before, this poll is pretty leaning in favor of her getting adjustment, I don't quite know if this is the direction that I want to see her go down, because again, with the buffs, if she ends up getting over buffed, we are not going to get we're not going to get something like I don't know, an architect like a situation where she's stronger, certainly, and maybe she didn't need the buff, but it was nice that she got it. We're going to go from basically, I don't even know how to describe it. Landy to post buff Landy, like she's gonna be broken is what I'm trying to get at here, which is why specifically for Albedo, despite all the playtesting, despite her win rate, and despite how much I'm personally seeing her on stream, live on stream every single day, and I fight her every single game, I will say she does not need a buff. She's extremely flexible. The flexibility in terms of her providing damage and you not knowing what build she's on, and the profile cards making it so you can't really track who you're fighting against, make her a super lethal threat. But if we move away from Albedo, let's talk about Ainz, because Ainz is kind of similar but different. Now, to be clear, Ainz is a character that I don't have as much experience playing against specifically, and more specifically even for myself, playing Ainz is kind of out of the question because I'm currently using him to farm the current side story event. Now, if you're like me and you are trying to take advantage of the event as well, and for some reason you still have leaves, well, playing him right now up until, I guess, the event is over is kind of off the table, or at least for when it matters. But there are equal as many people, although not necessarily shown here, that I do believe think that Ainz needs a bit of love. Now, to give you a timeline of Ainz, a lot of people, when Ainz first got shown, kind of thought about whether or not, or were kind of curious whether or not the 50,000 fixed damage would be enough. If it was interesting, if it was good, if it was worth looking into. And the honest to God truth is that, well, it doesn't even have to do with the 15% of the death sentence, or it doesn't even have to do with whether or not, he's got a useless S1, or if he doesn't strip on S1, any of these things. It doesn't matter if you have effectiveness, because ultimately, it doesn't matter if you get off your death sentence, because you'll just probably end up getting one shot anyways because of his S2. Now, if you aren't also aware of the balance patch that just came out, you should know that there's a very strong light character that has just been buffed named Last Piece Karen, who also was just given this new feature to her S2 that now avoids or ignores not only mitigation, so it's not even like you can pair Ainz with a character or with a knight character like an Airwell. Now she also ignores damage mitigating effects, and that includes things like Proof of Valor. So not that you necessarily have to fight, Ainz with LPK, or you fight LPK with Ainz, or anything to that extent, but it just seems a little bit interesting because just as we were maybe finding something that could work, specifically against Ainz, or Ainz could be good in certain situations, it feels like he just got knocked back down again, kind of for fun. Now, to be clear, I do want to also mention that on the same timeline, initially I saw him, or a lot of people saw him, we thought the fixed damage could be kind of interesting, but then while a lot of people kind of, I guess, saw how much damage he took from light and were like, wow, this is really bad, according to members in my community and a lot of you guys that you've mentioned, he does really well if you're fighting against very slow teams, and he cannot be reset. So in certain compositions where you aren't able to deal with the Ainz, or if you're taking a lot of turns, I think in specifically a draft where you're playing Ainz Ooal Gown against something like Laya, Crimson Armin, and like Yufine, compositions like this, it actually kind of makes sense that Ainz is strong, because of course these are slower characters, and even if they do end up taking more turns, Ainz is not going to get one shot by something like an Abyssal Yufine S1. All he really needs is the effectiveness, and then the rest of his stats kind of go straight into health and bulk. So, of course, he's going to shine in those compositions, but in my opinion, I think that Ainz shares a similar fate to Albedo, where although he may be strong in certain compositions, and if you wanted to maybe buff Ainz or Albedo either, I think what he actually needs is a lot of love in terms of how easy it is to build him, how much stat he can get. Now, lore accurately wise, he will always have to take the additional damage on his S2 from the light if they want to keep that lore accuracy. However, a couple suggestions have been kind of mentioned in terms of how to buff Ainz specifically, whether that's when he uses his skill 1 or when he uses his skill 3, he powers up and he gives himself buffs before he becomes, vulnerable to light and, all these different things. Or they could just reduce the amount of damage that you take from the light effect, because let's be honest, I mean, 30% damage against light, and Moonlight's kind of run the game right now. What are we talking about? In any case, I do think that I do think that Ainz is extremely niche as it is right now. Although he can be used against really slow players. If you guys have been on your end of final week kind of climb, you'll probably notice that one of the most annoying things that you're suffering from right now is probably cleavers. You're probably fighting against Emilpolitis, Cannaaaa, Ran, and things of this nature. Whether or not you even enjoy playing against cleaver or not, it is kind of it kind of goes without saying that Ainz right now is not really going to fit if all you're fighting against is cleave. He does literally nothing against cleave, and in that sense, it feels a little bit bad to play specifically Ainz. And as a good friend, my good friend Tristan Wolf has mentioned about these characters. And before we get to any of the buffs or whether or not they choose to buff, the point of collaboration characters, again, paraphrased from Tristan, is that they're supposed to be game changing. They're supposed to be revolutionary. And there are people that don't want things like a Cannaaaa 2.0 to come out, but collab characters have always historically changed or shifted or molded the way that the RTA scene or meta has played out. Now, it does feel bad when we don't get collaboration characters back out, but if the point of a collaboration is to bring in new players or bring more hype and excitement to a game, it does kind of beg the question, why would you then introduce a character that is boring or, usable or good, but only in a very specific boring situation if you're trying to draw interest and draw hype to a collaboration? In that sense, I kind of agree. I don't really have an argument against that. Although it does or could potentially shake the stability of RTA or things of this nature, it is not the point, or the point of a collaboration is not to make things steadily more stable, or, it's not trying to make things more stable. It's to shake things up. It's to, again, draw more interest towards the game and hopefully drag in more players that saw the game because of Overlord and they came to play and they hopefully get addicted or hooked to the game. That being said, as a final note on this, I do want to mention that, again, if you are someone, and again, another analogy or another situation, hypothetical, that Tristan also gave to me that was a really good kind of, I guess, way to think about it, is that if you were to join EpicSeven or play EpicSeven specifically because your favorite anime character or your favorite character from a collaboration were to come in, and the character were to be boring or super bad or niche, wouldn't you feel a little bit bad or not really be that interested in continuing to play? Personally, I played a couple of gacha games myself, and in other gacha games, if the character that I really like from the collaboration is OP, I sit there and I play it. That's just how it is. That's the truth. Evangelion with Tower Fantasy, I re-downloaded. I pulled. I'll admit it. Nikke and Rem and Amelia, I'll admit it. I played those characters. It was pretty cool. Makima is same thing. And that, hey, I love it. That was a good, that was a good time for me. And even though I'm not like a super avid player of any of these games to the point where I would consider calling myself an expert, they lured me in. I still do my dailies for these games on occasion, so it is what it is. That being said, if I were to myself answer the poll, the Albedo one, I guess, is too late because they've already shown the result. I would say that for Ainz, and again, I don't know why they chose these specific wordings for these options, but personally, I think that I think Ainz is probably a character that definitely needs to be in the hero in need of further improvement section. I don't know if people are misreading some of this. Some people have listed off Albedo and some characters as irreplaceable. I don't know if they mean that because they like love the character, but I think they're talking about the character in like a usability sense. So keep that in mind when you're voting for the poll. In any case though, guys, that's my thoughts about the new Overlord stuff, and this is kind of just my PSA to tell you guys to go vote for the thing, and hopefully we get a change or something like that. But in any case, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you again for watching. I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts as we wind down the last couple days of RTA. Speaking as someone that is like competing to try and get into Legend and stuff like that, it's quite tough. I've seen no Ainz whatsoever. However, I see Albedo every single game, no matter what. And so I just wanted to kind of share my opinions and my thoughts before either poll gets closed. I mean, Albedo's already closed. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you again for watching. If you enjoyed or you learned something, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. Thank you again for everyone watching and supporting, especially with the subathon. I'm still live, day 7. We're going strong. Anyways, make sure to check out the rest of my socials. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Good night, good afternoon. I'll see you on stream. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.